Rewritten Fates. Book 1. I woke up as the Duke's condemned wife. Chapter 1. Awakening. The first thing I noticed wasn't the light, but the smell. It was a suffocating cocktail of wood smoke, the damp chill of ancient stone, and the unmistakable copper tang of blood, my blood. The scent was sharp and metallic, hanging thick in the air as if the very walls had bore witness to something violent. My eyelids felt leaden, weighted down as though they had been stitched shut by sheer exhaustion. When I finally forced them open, the world above me didn't just appear. It swam into a blurred, agonizing focus. A vaulted ceiling stretched high overhead, carved from a dark obsidian marble that seemed to pulse with veins of silver. Iron chandeliers hung from the heights like jagged black crowns, each one dripping with the flickering honeyed light of a dozen candles. This was not my apartment. This was not my world. I groaned, pushing myself upright. A white-hot throb ignited behind my temples immediately, like a blacksmith's hammer striking bone. As the pain flared, fragments of memory surged through my mind, jagged, flickering images that didn't belong to me. I saw faces twisted in ivory masks. I heard the roar of a crowded courtroom. I felt the blistering heat of a pyre and heard the echoing, ragged scream of a woman. My breath caught, hitching painfully in my throat. A name surfaced from the depths of my subconscious, dredged up like a relic from deep, dark water. Elara Valen. My fingers tightened instinctively, bunching the heavy silk sheets beneath me. I knew that name. Every reader of the web novel The Silver Eclipse knew that name. Elara Valen was the villainess. She was the shadow in a world of light, the woman every character and every reader was taught to loathe. She was ambitious, she was manipulative, she was beautiful, and she was undeniably cruel. In the final chapters, she had framed the kingdom's beloved saintess for treason and attempted to lace her wine with a slow-acting poison. In the end, the royal court's judgment had been spectacular and unforgiving. They didn't just execute her, they turned her death into a holy festival. They burned her alive while the kingdom cheered. A slow, paralyzing chill slid down my spine. If these memories were real, if I was truly trapped inside this body, then that execution wasn't just a plot point anymore. It was an appointment. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my skin erupting in goosebumps as my bare feet hit the cold marble floor. Across the room stood a tall, floor-to-length mirror framed in tarnished silver. For several long seconds, I simply stared at it, the heartbeat thundering in my ears. Part of me was terrified to look, but a morbid curiosity won out. One careful step, then another, until the reflection came fully into view. The woman staring back at me was breathtaking, possessing a beauty that felt almost predatory. Silver hair cascaded down her shoulders like moonlight spilling across dark water. Her eyes were a deep, luminous violet, sharp enough to cut. Her skin was pale and flawless, looking less like flesh and more like fine, polished porcelain. She was elegant, she was deadly, she was the villainess. My voice faltered, catching in the dry air. Even the sound was foreign, softer, colder, and laced with a natural aristocratic refinement I didn't possess. I lifted my hands slowly. They were slender and delicate, with long, tapered fingers that had never known a day of hard labor. These were not my hands. This was real, I had woken up inside the body of Ilara Valen, and according to the story's original timeline, that meant I had exactly 3 days left to live. A knock suddenly echoed through the chamber, sharp, authoritative, and echoing like a gavel. The heavy oak door groaned open before I could even think to respond. Footsteps crossed the marble floor, slow and deliberate, each heel strike carrying a quiet sense of impending danger. I knew who it was before he even spoke. "So," a deep, resonant voice said calmly, "You're finally awake." I turned. The man standing in the doorway was the literal personification of the novel's descriptions. He was tall and broad-shouldered, clad in a charcoal doublet that screamed of military precision. Dark hair fell loosely across his forehead, framing a face of harsh masculine angles. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. They were the color of molten gold. Duke Alaric Viramont, the kingdom's most feared commander, the man who had crushed 3 rebellions before his 30th birthday. And according to the twisted logic of this story, the man who is currently my husband. His gaze swept across me slowly, evaluating and calculating as if he were looking for a flaw in a blade. There was no warmth in those golden depths. There was only a cold, simmering suspicion. "Do you remember what you did?" he asked. The question hung between us like a sharpened blade suspended by a single thread. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs. The truth was simple. I remembered everything, but none of the sins were mine. However, in this world, hesitation was an admission of guilt. "Yes," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. It was the most dangerous lie I had ever told. Alaric studied me for several agonizing seconds, his expression unreadable. Then he gave a single curt nod. "Good." He stepped fully into the room, the scent of leather and cold winter air following him. "The court wanted your execution carried out immediately," he continued, his tone conversational, as if he were discussing the weather. I blinked, my pulse spiking. But the king postponed it. That caught me off guard. Why? His gaze sharpened, narrowing slightly, because the saintess asked him to. Lyra, the saintess of light, the heroine of the story and the woman Ilara had supposedly tried to murder. She was the one responsible for Ilara's downfall, yet here she was, playing the role of the merciful savior. "Listen carefully," Alaric said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous silk. He stepped closer, invading my space. "For the next 48 hours, you are my wife." The words landed like a heavy stone in my chest. Wife. My mind raced through the novel's timeline. In the original text, Ilara was forced into this marriage as a final humiliation, a way for the crown to keep her under the Duke's watchful eye before her end. 2 days later, she was dead. After that, Alaric continued with chilling calmness, the king will decide whether you are permitted to live or if you will burn. Silence filled the chamber, heavy and suffocating. 48 hours. I had 2 days to survive, 2 days to rewrite a story that had already reached the end. Then, without warning, pain exploded across my collarbone. I gasped, clutching at my chest as a searing heat spread beneath my skin like liquid fire. Alaric's gaze dropped immediately to the opening of my gown. A strange, ethereal symbol began to glow faintly against my skin, a jagged, violet mark that pulsed with a rhythmic light. The mark of the betrayer. The court believed this brand appeared only on the skin of liars and traitors. Alaric watched the glow with a dark, renewed interest. Then his golden eyes lifted slowly to meet mine. "Interesting," he murmured, stepping so close I could feel the radiant heat of his body. "The Saintess said this mark only reacts to deception." My pulse quickened. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering just inches from the glowing mark. "Tell me, Duchess," he whispered, his voice a low growl of curiosity and threat. "What exactly did you do to the Saintess?" I held his gaze, refusing to look away, even as I realized something terrifying. If I didn't learn the hidden rules of this world, and fast, I was going to die a villain's death inside someone else's tragedy. But in the royal court, nothing is ever truly over. Secrets move in the shadows, and every choice rewrites fate. Continue the story in the next episode of Rewritten Fates, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.